government. We've only got one more to go after this, and thanks for your continuing participation. They seem to have gone pretty well, and we appreciate your time and attention. This one is a little unique compared to the other ones. Some might compare this to eating your vegetables and then getting some dessert. Vegetables being accountable government and Identity Lincoln being the dessert. But both those labels don't necessarily fit exactly. In the accountable government area, it's probably the most neglected part of our government in a long ways. It's the stuff that you don't necessarily see happening, that happens behind the scenes. And frankly, since it isn't necessarily as glamorous as like police officers, firefighters, or parks, it tends to be a thing in a budget that we don't necessarily put as much emphasis on. But I can assure you that it really, truly is a key to keeping city government healthy, much like eating your vegetables apparently keeps all of you healthy. So the reasons that this is important to us. Transparency is a big portion of what we do in accountable government and the measures that we put into place. The city communications team has quite a job in front of them. They need to inform the public about all road closures, about our plan for removing snow when that happens. They run the website, and they ensure that people have the information they need to evaluate what's happening at City Hall. And that's an important consideration, because keep in mind here that one of the indicators that we use to measure people's ability to assess us is how many of them know what percentage of the property tax levy that the city consumes. And we do that by measuring that, the Taking Charge survey that we do every other year. And while it has been getting better, only about a third of people get correct our percentage range of the property tax levy. And that obviously has some impact on how they evaluate what we do if they don't know that information. So that's an example of why transparency and communication is so important. And Diane Gonzalez of City Communications is going to talk a little bit about that later in the agenda. Efficiency is another goal of our accountable government efforts. The new software that's being implemented, Granicus, so that your agendas are much more available to you to interact, make notes, and be able to access documents associated with the agenda much more quickly. We think that's an important view on efficiency. You're going to hear more from Steve Henderson and others about software changes that we're trying to implement that we hope increases efficiency and effectiveness throughout the organization. What you won't hear necessarily today as much as we'd like to discuss it, but something that a big organization needs, hey John, how you doing? A big organization needs to be aware is succession. The average age of a city employee is apparently about 46 years old, so I'm still a young guy, mark that down. And as a result of that, though, it's an organization that it's an organization that really does need to put some emphasis on the types of things like succession planning to ensure that the very important functions in which we undertake aren't forgotten in the midst of time. And that really leads into the notion of training, which we don't do a whole lot of. And Doug McDaniel is going to talk a little bit about that today, because we think that's a very important consideration as our organization achieves the goals that we set. Finally, one of the things that's important to us in the Beitler administration is innovation and evaluation, which is certainly part of accountable government. We've talked ad nauseum about taking charge and this link stat process. But that is the foundation for hopefully finding new ways of doing business, evaluating our goals, and seeing if new ways of doing business can lead to the type of innovation that makes programs perform better and saves us money. So I think you're going to be hearing out of the administration during this next go-around, what can we do on the innovation side? What money can we invest to become a more innovative organization and help departments develop new practices and new ways of doing business? Nothing concrete right at this moment. It's just an idea that we're kind of kicking around, and we'd appreciate any input that you have about how we can make that organization more innovative. And finally, the notion of evaluation in accountable government is important. We tend to think of evaluation primarily as audits, and certainly that's a good tool for evaluating fiscal impact. But evaluation should be something that we're teaching our employees to do every day to determine effectiveness of the programs so they can change directions and make the adjustments which make programs more effective. So that's something that's on our mind in accountable government. Now, moving from the vegetables to what many people perceive to be dessert, Identity Lincoln, I would tell you that's more than a bit of a misnomer. Identity Lincoln covers the types of things that makes Lincoln marketable, that gives us a marketable identity, and honestly generates quite a few dollars for the community. The types of activities that we do at the Pinnacle Bank Arena, the types of activities we do at the Pinewood Bowl, and the city events where sometimes we have a concert in the street or a number of other things that happen on game day, those sorts of things do generate considerable revenue in the community, over $3 million a year in lodging tax alone, from the percentage people pay from staying in the Lincoln and restaurants, bars, et cetera, so forth. But more than that, it's that marketable identity that allows us to recruit people, that allows the Chamber of Commerce to tell the young folks they want to come and lend their skills to our economic development, that Lincoln is an interesting community. A very quick example of that. We allowed Skrillex, a Grammy Award-winning DJ, to perform in the streets of Lincoln. Now, I went to that, and Carl remembers it because it was loud. Now, I went to that not because this guy is necessarily in the genre of music that I appreciate, but I did kind of want to see what was going on. 5,500 people in the streets, and the real value was afterwards when the taping on YouTube reached hundreds of thousands of people across the United States promoting Lincoln the way that Skrillex in the streets did. It was an electric kind of situation. There were a lot of people there that were having a great time, and it gave a really positive, marketable impression to the rest of the United States on what was happening in Lincoln, Nebraska. So those are the type of things that we talk about when we talk about Identity Lincoln. How are we bringing people in, and how are we generating revenues from that? So without too much further ado, I'm going to turn to the folks from Pinnacle Bank Arena to introduce themselves and let them talk about the first item on our agenda, Community Events Impact on City Halls, which is divided into two sections, an update on Pinnacle Bank Arena and Pinewood Bowl, and then we're going to talk about other special events on top of that. Just to orient you, the two things that have been sat in front of you actually are similar. The one with the small slides has the big slides that's separate in it. So you should look at the big slides and switch back over after you're done, if that makes any sense. Okay, take it away.
Thank you, Rick. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Charlie Schilling, and behind me is Trent Brown, and we are part of the SMG Lincoln team, and we're really glad to be here. I guess we're dessert.
Start with dessert.
Start with dessert, why not? My wife does it all the time. So we're going to give you a macro view of Pinnacle Bank Arena and Pinewood Bowl. Each of you can follow along in your handbooks. We intend to showcase, there's 50 slides in there, but don't be alarmed, this presentation is going to go about 10-15 minutes. Let's start with the history of Pinnacle Bank Arena. Oops, hope I can see this. Many of you are familiar with the history, but there was a public vote in 2010. The construction began in 2011. The railroad had the removals in 2012, along with the topping off ceremony in December of that year. And then our grand opening was September of 2013, and then 2 months later we had our first basketball game. What did we build? Just under 500,000 square feet of beautiful multi-use arena, 3 public concourses, capacities ranging from 15 to just under 16,000, 36 suites, 20 loges, 2 private lounges, as well as 73 points of sale. I love everything about this slide. First, I invite you to look at the pictures. I think the arena is an architectural gem, and it anchors the skyline wonderfully. But as you look at these numbers, keep in mind that they do not include basketball totals. So we have sold over 1 million tickets and over $65 million in ticket sales. Again, 1 million tickets, 65 million in ticket sales. Trent and I were talking as we put this slide together. Had we looked at this slide in 2012, we would have scratched our head and wondered if these were real numbers, but we're just kind of amazed. The highest gross was Paul McCartney, and the highest attended event was Eric Church.
Out of those gross, how much do you have to pay to the marketer of those?
The talent fees, we haven't.
No, the ticket group.
How much do we have to pay to the talent?
Ticketmaster, thank you.
Oh, what are the service fees to Ticketmaster?
Is that included or is that on top of?
Those are gross tickets. That does include service fees, yeah. And I don't have that breakout, I'm sorry. Trent, I'm going to invite you up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Charlie said I got to participate, but I have to talk about the boring things. So here I am. I'm going to talk about the next couple of slides. The first one's up there in front of you. And As he mentioned, we were amazed when we started pulling up the numbers, going all the way back, looking at the returns and such. And we can point out that he already talked about the ticket sales. Total taxable sales at the arena since 2013 has been over $80 million. That's taxable sales from arena operations, which includes, again, as he mentioned, artist tickets, merchandise sales for those artist T-shirts and such, and food and beverage. And again, there are no UNL basketball tickets in that taxable sales number. Within those taxable sales, there's a restaurant occupation tax, which is the 2%. We've generated over $400,000 in restaurant occupation tax just from the food and beverage sales at the arena. And then down below to the left, you see the state and city sales tax. We've remitted over $6.2 million out of those taxable sales. And then the financing piece, one of the financing pieces for the arena and the development was the turnback tax, or the Sports Arena Facility Financing Assistance Act. 70%, mouthful, 70% of the state portion of sales tax gets turned back to the JPA to help with the with funding of the project, and we've returned over $3 million of that state tax has come back. Those two items at the bottom, we don't directly control or monitor, obviously, but they're just two other things that are affected by the arena and the operations, bringing different things to town.
Trent, do you have any idea how much the restaurant occupation tax is from the other restaurants around town?
I do not have those numbers.
So, I mean, that's additional revenue.
That is
too.
additional. This is just, this number is just for arena food and beverage sales.
Okay, so down at the bottom with those, we could,
Brandon can answer that for us.
oh,
That's later. Later.
okay,
That's later.
okay, thank you.
Okay, Larry?
Do you have a breakdown of how much of the sales tax has come to the city? Or you've got state and city pulled together? Is there a way to disaggregate those?
There is a way. It's a little difficult. We looked into that. We've got it lumped together because
Goes to the state and
it,
comes back to us?
well, there, at first it was 1.5, and then 3 years ago, we went to the 1.2 or 1.75 rate. And so up to a point, it would be easy to just do all 1.5 or 1.75, but trying to figure out that breakdown where that transition happened. Yeah, basically you'd look at that and try to use round numbers and say, 5.5% of that is state, and 1.5 would be city, or 1.75, depending on the timing.
One of the things you look at, if you take the 400,000 in the restaurant occupation tax at 2%, that equates to 20 million gross sales at the arena. Does that sound right?
In food and beverage sales, yes, that could be about right. I'm going memory here, $4 or $5 million in food and beverage sales a year.
So if we took
yeah,
1.5% times that might, Larry, give you an idea there.
All right, any other on that one? All right, the next page was provided to us by the Lancaster County Geographic Information System. I don't know a whole lot about this one other than it's impressive. You see 2013 on the left and 2017 on the right, and it highlights the property values of the Haymarket area highlighted there. And just going down and looking at the numbers, you can see that there's been about 100% increase in property value or more from 2013 through 2017. That's all I've got for now.
I think it's 47%.
PBA is a multi-purpose, multi-use arena, and its usage reflects as much. You can see the diversity of the activity by the number of event days in this slide. Our primary tenant is UNL basketball, and our primary usage is sports. But you can see we've hosted concerts, family shows, and festivals, as well as conventions, consumer shows, and meetings. But let's focus on the major events.
How did you have 14 Rib Fests in 5 years?
14 event days.
Oh,
Yeah, they're event days.
thank you.
Yeah. So here is a sort of an outline of the history of the arena. Who can forget our open night with Michael Bublé? It was magic when he praised the room for having wonderful acoustics, and clearly others have followed on this list. Who are some of your favorites? Remember that not only was Michael Bublé our opener, but we had 10 shows in the first 80 days of the building before we hosted our first basketball game. The Eagles were epic. Pink was actually the first ever on sale. Katy Perry broke the record for having 27 trucks. The Bulls and the Mavericks sold out, featuring Dougie McDermott. James Valentine returned with Maroon 5. Returned home. Billy Joel was massive. Bruno Mars and Kendrick Lamar just cleaned up on the Grammys. Terrence Bud Crawford fight was incredible. And I just have Garth next to Garth. That's all I'm going to say. I'll touch on him a little bit more. But that's kind of an impressive list. I don't want to glance over it. I will tell you, upcoming shows. Pink returns. Lord is right around the corner. Monster Jam is in April. Brad Paisley follows. Chris Young is an up-and-coming Nashville headliner. Cirque du Soleil returns. Zach Brown Band. Again, you're seeing repeat acts. He was here in 2014, coming back in 2018. Journey and Def Leppard co-headline and make their return. And this morning, I don't know who is going to buy tickets, but we do have Metallica coming. I don't want to downplay it, although it may not be your personal taste of music. Metallica is doing 34 arena dates. We are the 154th MSA in the marketplace, and again, it just continues to tell that story that this market is performing extremely well. It speaks to the health of the arena, the economy, and the strength of Lincoln as we get support from the state and the region. But I mentioned our primary tenant. Our relationship with UNL is a very healthy partnership. As some of you know, we recently did upgrades to the courtside room to enhance the fan experience for UNL patrons. But if you came to the game last night, you saw that they got their 13th victory. There's a lot of chatter at the coffee shop about whether or not they're going to make the tournament. I think both teams are doing extremely well. Men's basketball has sold out since the beginning of the building. And as you guys know, as the team wins and performs well, the attendance does well. And I think they reported a really high number for attendance last night. But the men and the women are both doing really well. Proud of them. Other events that include sports and state include state volleyball, as well as boys and girls state basketball, FFA, FCCLA, and graduations and more. And this slide, again, just illustrates the fact that the athletes, the fans, the students, the coaches, the administrators have recognized Lincoln as their destination for their events. But not only are they coming to Lincoln, but they're staying in our hotels. We're seeing this impact throughout. We know what it looks like for pre and post events. This is what Garth looks like. And again, it's just a flood of people. And the reason we show these to you is that we talk about impact to the city, to the community. We know that the restaurants, the bars, and the hotels are getting filled up. This is the view looking back toward the arena. This is where we kind of go fast. The building has been very fortunate to be recognized in the industry. In the building's first year, we were nominated for Best New Concert Venue by Polestar Magazine. And this last calendar year, 2017, Polestar, based on ticket sales, recognized us as the 45th ranking arena in the United States, 85th ranked in the world. And again, we're the 154th MSA competing at this level. It's pretty remarkable.
What were those 2017 figures again?
2017 totals,
No,
we
no,
were
you
ranked
just
45th in the United States, 85th in the world.
Thank you.
And Facilities Magazine also recognized us as a Prime Site Award winner. So our reputation in the industry continues to grow, but our reputation with the artists continue to grow as well. I mentioned Michael Bublé talking about the acoustics in the building. Garth Brooks came to town, did 5 shows in 50 hours, set the record by doing just under 68,000 people. Two multiple performance days, just an incredible run. But he goes back to Nashville, he does a podcast, and he literally starts saying stuff about his Lincoln experience that was just extraordinary. In fact, I don't know if I can read this, but he writes, or he says, "Just sweet people. Any artist out there, if you ever get a chance to play Lincoln, you're damn lucky. I can tell you that." And we couldn't be, we're sort of the lucky ones for his praise. We really appreciate that. But not only have these major events sold out and done well, but we have had quite a variety. And again, we have literally since the building's beginning, we have sold out 33 major events. 33 major events sold out. But this slide illustrates the variety of different genres, from Red Hot Chili Peppers to Elton John to Paul McCartney to Motley Crue to Bruno Mars. If anyone can tell me which concert this is, we should give you a prize.
Kiss.
Gotta be kids.
Yeah, there's a lot of pyro. It certainly looks like it. I mentioned Eric Church set the record for the highest attended event. This is what it looks like. Katy Perry. Soul to Soul, Tim and Faith. And I pause here on this slide just to remind you that the room really is captivating. It has amazing acoustics, amazing sight lines, amazing amenities, amazing production, a vibrant downtown in an amazing city. Let's focus on Pinewood Bowl for a minute and talk about the history. It was dedicated in 1947. They covered the stage in 1975. The community theater began in 1949. And in 2012, the City of Lincoln and SMG developed a partnership to begin programming a concert series. So here is kind of a macro view of Pinewood Bowl. In our first 6 seasons, it's hard to believe it's been that long, we have sold just under 100,000 tickets, totaling over $5 million in ticket sales. And again, I'll highlight to Trent's slide earlier, if you add this ticket sale number to the 65 in the arena, that's $70 million in just entertainment dollars feeding the marketplace. The highest single gross was Paul Simon, and the highest attended event was a tie between Mumford & Sons and 21 Pilots. Again, here is a history of Pinewood Bowl. We opened in 12 with Counting Crows. That first season, Mumford & Sons anchored that first year, kind of helped put us on the map. 2013, you can see, was kind of a stub year, given the fact that we were opening the new arena. And then you start to see a build in 14, 15, leading into 16 and 17. And we're off to a nice start in 2018. We do hope to have 10 shows. We have 7 confirmed. We announced 1 today, but I'll go through those with you quickly. We have the Impractical Jokers, the Great Pinewood Bluegrass Festival, Primus and Grammy Award-winning Mastodon, Jackson Brown, Steve Miller and Peter Frampton, Jason Mraz, and we just announced I Mom So Hard this morning. Yeah, some of them are laughing. My wife was dying to go, and I know Diane knows a little bit about this group.
What happens when, say, like the Beach Boys in 2016, they got rained out and then they had to go to Pinnacle Bank? How does that get accounted for?
We get lucky that the arena is open.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we've had, in the course of all of these years, I think we've had 4 events get relocated into the arena, and we've been very blessed. Not every event has the arena open, so yeah, these events are technically rain or shine, and we've been able to sustain the events by having the arena.
They still do get counted as a show.
I know, okay.
So Pinewood Bowl has some magic. I know some of you have been out there. We invite you to go out and experience Pinewood Bowl under the stars. Alabama in 2016. Again, this is what the record-breaking Mumford & Sons looks like. But the thing about Pinewood Bowl that's been fun and amazing is that it's been diverse and eclectic in its programming. So you're seeing a lot of different variety, and with that comes a variety of fans. There are some improvements underway. In 2015, again, the city Parks Department and SMG put together a master plan. Some of those plans include improving the back of the house for production, the front of the house for the audience, and some infrastructure. Regarding that master plan, they've already lowered the mix area in the spring of 17. Construction is underway currently for the new entry plaza. Last fall, construction began for the new scene shop, and this coming fall, construction will begin for the development for stage right. But this is what it looks like with the mix area lowered. Again, this allows us to sell seats behind the mix, so our capacity grows. This is the future scene site shop area, stage left. We need to improve some expanded staging areas for trucks. This is stage left where they've improved some staging area. And again, Lincoln continues to grow in reputation as a music city. In fact, there was an article in today's paper that talked about the health of the arts and music community kind of growing. Certainly that's true for us, but this theater is part of a great set of venues that include the Bourbon, Vega, Zoo Bar, Lead Center, Rococo Theater, as well as the arena. We know that the park has seen expanded use with just activity with the music. And we know that the Pinewood Bowl Theater has had an impact on the hotels and the CVB. Again, this is kind of a glamour shot of Pinewood Bowl Theater. On behalf of Trent, myself, Tom, who couldn't be here, we want to thank you for letting us be stewards to these amazing venues. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we're just a few minutes behind. I'd love it if we could try to get caught up on the next section and then maybe do comments or questions as a collective on community events, if that's okay?
Okay.
Jane, Tom, you guys ready to come on up?
Good morning, or good afternoon maybe now, I don't know. But I'm Shane Dostal. I work for the City of Lincoln Public Works Department in the Traffic Engineering section. And so today, I'm going to talk a little bit about special events in the City of Lincoln, kind of the process, what we have going on. We're not the glitz and glamour of the PBA, so we don't get a lot of revenue in our section from special events, but it's just the economic impact to the city that these special events bring in a roundabout way. So with that, the first chart here is just a kind of a little bit of a bar graph of the events that have been taking place in Lincoln over probably the past 10 years. And for a while there, it's just kind of been pretty level with the total number of events in Lincoln. In 15-16, we had 61 events. This last year, in this, that'd be the 16-17 like fiscal year, we had 78 events, and we actually had 88 special event applications put in. 9 of those withdrew for whatever reasons, whether it be just they couldn't get. I know a couple of them were Bourbon Theater to go do concerts on Centennial Mall, and their performers backed out. So, but those are a couple of those. Kind of some trends, and I think that we're seeing here in the city of Lincoln is with the special events and the number increasing, probably the addition of Tower Square has brought a few events to Lincoln. Definitely the rail yard. We see numerous events that want to come in conjunction with a PBA concert series. It's not the most ideal thing to have down there during the concert series because PBA has expressed some concerns to us with the sound reverberating off of the Pinnacle Bank Arena. So we try not to overlap them if we can. I know there's some venues that would like to do that. What else? Oh, the update of Centennial Mall has become a big draw for events in that Centennial Mall area, like Ribfest, the way it used to be down there, and things like that. People want to have that Capitol and everything in their background, so when they're doing their event, they can have that there. And one thing to note on this graph here is these are just special events that happen. So anything that happens in the festival space or over at Haymarket Park, anything like that that doesn't involve the streets being somehow affected, are not represented in here. So, and one thing I think too that we're probably going to see in the next few years too with this is UNL is now taking the stance where if you're an event that wants to do anything on their campus, that you have to be associated with some type of organization that is UNL represented. So I know we have a couple runs that we do on city campus that are no longer going to take place on city campus, but they're going to take place on the city streets this next year. So that's one thing I think we'll see some events increase on city streets over the next few years. So a little bit about the special event process. Basically what it entails is that an applicant usually either comes to the Public Works Department or the Parks Department or some other department within the city, and the repeat ones know what to do, but the new ones they don't know what to do. So basically we walk them through the process, so to speak, and the first thing that they have to do is fill out an application and submit that to the city clerk's office. And the city clerk makes sure that they have the appropriate bonding and insurance and all that stuff, so that if something were to happen during the event, the city is going to be covered with their insurance or with their bond to get anything that they may damage, we can get back in that bond. So as far as special events go, there is a $45 application fee for a special event. The special event ordinance was created in June of 1995, so that allowed us to track the special events within the city. Prior to that, I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure because I wasn't in this group at that time. So I think it was just one of those things where if you wanted to close a road, you just kind of talk to the city and you close the road for your event. Also included with special events is parade permits. Those are currently, there's no fee for a parade permit. But they are allowed to shut down streets with parade permits. The Women's March is one that comes to mind, Right to Life. Those are actually a no fee to the city. So they just put an application in for the parade, and there's no fee associated to that. And then that was started, actually, parade permits were started in March of 1990 with the city ordinance. And then film permits currently also are a no fee. Those aren't really that big in the city of Lincoln. Last year there was 8 of those that were applied for in the city of Lincoln. And that, the film permit ordinance started in October of 2012. So I think that was kind of an afterthought. We don't have a lot that come in the city. I don't, with what Charlie's saying and stuff like that, I mean, with the city of Lincoln becoming a music venue and stuff like that, I think you might start seeing some things that might want to start coming to Lincoln with films. And then, as far as parade permits go, there were 49 of those that were submitted last year within the city of Lincoln. So some of those are they're walk on the sidewalks, not much impact to the city as far as road closures or resources that are needed by the city, but there were 49 of those. And I think we've seen a trend in that over the past couple of years, and whether or not that's just people wanting to express more of what's going on at the national level, and then they bring that to the local level to get their word heard by various organizations. And so, then as far as block party permits, that is something that it's not handled by the city clerk's office. That is handled by the Public Works Department. And basically what that is if you want to block off your street to do any kind of neighborhood parade, get together, anything like that, that allows you the right to do that. It's a $45 fee, and it's handled at the City of Lincoln Public Works office for that. And that I would say we probably had between 75 and 100 of those last year. 45 to 50 of those happened on the 4th of July weekend. So that's the majority of that. But there are some throughout the year that want to take part in something like that. So,
Shane, when you talk about the application, or maybe you're going to
Yes.
get to it, are there other costs incurred with police officers or how that?
yes, I mean, it's part of, and I'll probably kind of get to that in this one,
Thank you.
but yes, there are. So the second step to the special event process is once the application's been submitted to the city clerk's office, then we have a special events team that's comprised of these individuals here from Parks and Rec, LPD, both, as far as LPD, there's team captains involved, and there's also an officer that's involved on the Liquor Commission that shows up to each one of these events, because some of the events that take place in the city streets, if they want to serve alcohol, they have to get a special designated liquor license, which you all know. LFR, City Attorney's Office, Health Department, Parking Service, City Clerks, and Mayor's Office is involved with those. And so with that, and then one thing, it says here now led by Public Works and Utilities, and that's myself doing that now, but for probably the past 25 years, it was led by the Parks and Recs Department. Jerry Shorney is the one that used to do that. And since he's retired, most of the events that happen on city streets. So it was just logical to bring that to the Public Works side of things. And then so when we're meeting with the individuals here, some of the things that get discussed with the applicants is things like need for LPD officers to work their event, whether it's security, whether it's street closures, or whether it's anything like that. But basically, those are accounted for as off-duty police officers. So I can't say every event, but most of the events in the city of Lincoln, you try to use off-duty officers so that it doesn't take away from the resources there. But so they have to pay that off-duty officer fee, which is depending on whether or not they have, and Tom can talk to this, but whether or not they have, a cruiser and an officer or just officers with that. So, and then if there's any LFR needs, those get billed back also to the event for their time. And then the one other thing that, depending on how many events that are occurring on a weekend, the Public Works Department works some events, and then we also can collaborate with a couple of the private barricade companies in Lincoln to cover the additional needs that may be needed if there's more than one event. And those usually so those fees get charged back to the event also. So that's how we try to recuperate. But that $45 fee, that's just yeah, that fee probably doesn't even account for the city clerk's time to process the application to make sure all the bond and insured and all that is taking place. And with that, in another slide in the back here is one of those things where to look at some of our peer cities in the future to see what they're doing. I know there's a few events that happen in other cities where they actually charge a nominal fee for each participant, and that it's easier to do on an athletic event like a run or something like that. But if you're talking like Zoo Fest or Lincoln Calling or something in the rail yard, where that would be pretty tough to exactly. So there's no way to charge any fees for that. And then the third step in the application process is once we meet with the individuals at the special events team level and try to get a sense of what they're doing for their event and what their requirements will be. We'll discuss that with them at the event meeting, but then we'll come back and to the various departments and we'll make our recommendations to that event, and we'll send that through the city clerk's office to say whether or not, this is what you're gonna need to close the road, this is what you're gonna need for officers, and this is what you're gonna need for LFR's safety for your participants or for your event. So that's the third process in that. So, so this is just one of those, like I was saying before with Parks and Rec and LPD, and that's one other thing that I didn't mention above here too. So if an event takes place in the city park or the city trail, then that's a separate application or a separate fee for the use of the trail or the parks, and those won't be in our special events numbers either, because those are just fees on their side and not on our side, so we don't track those. So with that, I'll let Tom.
Let's just switch. I just want to tell you a little bit about the public safety implication of events. And you should be pretty impressed by now with the sheer increase in the number of events going on in the city. PBA, Pinewood Bowl, special events. It's just huge and has grown just dramatically over the years. And a great issue. Contributes immensely to the ambiance of Lincoln. There's something to do every single weekend. From my standpoint as public safety director, however, all of these events carry a public safety need. They have a load. And this is a pretty good indication of what's happened with just the last 2 years. 2015, we needed 2,287 slots for police officers who were off duty to service this need. Last year it was over 2,900. It's increased 27% in just the past 2 years. And this is all after PBA opens in 2013. So if we went back 5 years, the increase has been even more dramatic. Just a huge increase in the need and demand, and one that we're having increasingly difficult times in fulfilling. So we have slots that go empty simply because we don't have anyone to put in those slots, on duty or off duty, with increasing frequency.
Tom, did that include off and on duty when you say slots and as a slot?
Those are only off-duty slots.
Okay.
So that wouldn't include on-duty. Now, there are only a few events that we use on-duty police officers as part of the event.
Okay, and
We do that at the Lincoln Marathon. We do it on football game days.
So these figures don't include that?
Correct.
And when you say slot, is a slot like the event, or is it like an hour?
No, it's one officer for one event. So that could be an 8-hour event or it could be a 2-hour event. So all I'm trying to do here, John, is point out to you that this, just the demand has just grown significantly for
Does
police
officers get
officers.
paid directly, or does the city have to administer all that transfer of
Oh,
funds?
it depends. We do it both ways. Some employers will pay directly, and for others, we bill them. So the officer's paid through the city payroll, and the organizer gets a bill. So we do a combination of those. So it's a big increase for us, and it's not only on the police side either. It's also on Lincoln Fire and Rescue, because many of these events, certainly not all of them, but many of them demand some kind of emergency medical service standby as well. So for emergency medical services, we'll bring in off-duty firefighters. We'll stand up one of our reserve medic units that would be staffed with those off-duty personnel. And we're having the same difficulty there at Lincoln Fire and Rescue. Difficulty in filling positions because basically everyone is saturated. Firefighters and police officers, are limited in number, so the ability to get people who will volunteer to come in on their off-duty time, even for the rather lucrative overtime rate, is drying up, particularly on the high-demand days and periods. And we will have those days and weekends where we have multiple events going on at the same time, and we might have 2, 3, 4 medic unit standby scheduled on a single day. So that's putting an increased strain on the limited number of people that are available to fill those slots. And as I said, on the police side, some of them are going unfilled. So it's not just a matter of the cost, because for the most part, with, I guess, 4 exceptions, the cost of these resources is borne by the organizer. It's just the ability to assemble enough personnel to handle it that's causing us problems. Again, good issue to have, good problem to have for a community. Just something to keep in mind when you hear Chief Despain and Chief Blymeister talking about the increasing workload that they're servicing. That part of that is the workload that's being created by this demand for service. My own perception is that people, not only it's more events, but I also believe that there are more events that would not have asked for police service, for example, 10 years ago that are now. Just an increasing concern about safety and security. So we get a lot more requests, even if it were the same number of events, and the events obviously have been going up pretty dramatically.
On the medic side, do we have, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask if there, do we have private companies that offer this type of security, or what the type of coverage that's being offered by LFR? And if not, or if we do, are they allowed to do that when a city permit is pulled for an event?
We do, and they are. Yes, we do have private security companies here in Lincoln that provide an awful lot of security, primarily at facilities, not so much at events, although some events as well, including the events in the rail yard. And we have, Midwest Medical and Medics at Home, 2 private ambulance companies here in Lincoln. In fact, one of the things that happened this year, for the first time that I can remember, the medical standby at University of Nebraska football games is being handled by Midwest Medical, not by Lincoln Fire and Rescue.
Thank you.
And frankly, we were very happy about that, because those were days that were particularly difficult for us to assemble enough resources to deal with the issues. It's you.
It's me.
I think it's just one slide.
So just a little bit to talk about considerations for the future. One thing about to increase the number of events in Lincoln, I think one thing we can probably do is currently that the application process is a 14-page application process that can get kind of cumbersome to the individual, and it can kind of be a little overwhelming for what they're wanting to do on the city streets or what they're wanting to do with their event. So one of the things we're looking at with the mayor's office is try to condense that into something that's a little more manageable, a little more easy to follow, and something that can be processed online. Currently, they have to print it off, fill it out by hand, and bring it to the city clerk's office. So that's one thing we're looking at. And then another thing, like I said before, is a peer city analysis of maybe how they kind of do some of their events. I know there's some communities that, and Tom's saying the same thing. I mean, we have 2, 3, 4 events at the same time, and we're already getting requests now for some events that want to lock in their date a year or 2 out. And the reason is just because of resources that Tom has available, that we have available, to allow their event to come off in the same manner. And currently, we've been able to say that, yes, we can reserve that date for you, and we're probably not gonna have any other events on those days. But I think that the time's gonna come here in the future where that's not gonna be the case anymore. And so how do we get those, and we're having the case right now. Farmers Market downtown is every Saturday, starting in May and going till October. So not only do we have the overlap of that and football in this fall, but we're starting to have the overlap of that and several special events that like the rail yard to be either their finish point or their starting point. And so you've got several issues going on there, and PBA's gonna just increase their number of events over time also, I believe. And so we're gonna have that issue with that. So that's one thing that, whether or not that becomes with a fee structure or something of that respect to get those events managed for more than one. And so, that's one thing, with that. And then just, making safety resources available to the applicants. That's one thing right now with Public Works, and we have kind of the same issues Tom's talking about, is that, you know, if there's 2 or 3 events in one day, there is, you know, the capabilities out there to have enough people to staff those, but it's just the same thing as they've already been working for 40 hours and then getting the overtime rate. And we're definitely seeing that. Like I said before, we try to get some private-public partnership there, so the private companies do some events. And right now, we're getting to the point where most of those private companies don't even want to do those events on the weekends because that's taxing on their resources. And so if they can't handle that, then the city has to handle that in some way, shape, or form. And the other thing too that I forgot to mention too is with all these events that are the new events that are coming to Lincoln, and the repeat events I think will continue to stay, but the new events, a lot of those seem to be more national events that are coming to Lincoln. I mean, we had the Special Olympics national games here a couple years ago. This year we're going to have the Mustang National Car Show that's going to take place in the city of Lincoln. Last year we had the Nebraska 150 celebration. So there's all those things that are coming to Lincoln that I think to meet that goal that on that first slide, or that bar slide, to increase our events by 5%. I think that's definitely going to be very doable. It's just going to be a matter of the resources to get those things done in the future.
If I may, on thinking of canvases or places for events, in the past, you know, a lot's been still on the streets, but we now have the Pinnacle Bank Arena. We have the areas to the north there of it where you have the car shows a lot of the times.
Right.
And we used to use Centennial Mall for Rib Fest, but as we create more of these areas, Pioneer Park becoming more user-friendly, maybe the paving the lots and so forth, is there a way you can encourage to use those so it doesn't encumber the city streets and maybe make it more friendly for the event itself?
John, we do that now. We always try to encourage organizers to think about ways that they can reduce. Generally, they get sticker shock when you tell them how much it's going to cost to hire 18 police officers to direct traffic for their road race. And it's expensive. So we're always working with them, trying to suggest alternative routes, ways that they can do these things that require fewer personnel, fewer barricades. And, you know, alternatives for medical standby, for example. We'll offer bike medics. And for an awful lot of events, just having 1 or 2 EMTs there, not even necessarily a paramedic, is sufficient for their needs. So we suggest these kinds of things a lot. And I got to say that the rail yard in Haymarket West is a pretty good place. You know, you can control traffic there pretty easily. So good place for things like the market-to-market relay and the Good Life Halvesy to begin and end. But, you know, that's something that we do pretty commonly, is try to help them figure out how they can do it that costs them less and causes us less heartburn.
Unfortunately, it's not a panacea for all that ails us in this area. For instance, Zoo Fest, which has become a very successful event for Lincoln, just wasn't viable over at 12th and N where we used to have them, but it's very viable on 14th Street. Another good example, when 311 came to town and wanted to play in front of the state capitol, it was hard to say no to a band of that magnitude that was generating 6,000 people in the street. I think you're right. We should always try to guide them to the effort or the situation that's best for us. But in some cases, that just isn't going to be possible.
And I'll reiterate with Rick on that. In one couple venues is Celebrate Lincoln is one that was always down at Centennial Mall. It moved to Festival Space, and now it's back on the city streets. And the one thing that a lot of these events want that you don't have at the Festival Space is walk-by traffic. So if you're at the Festival Space for PBA, if that's a destination you're going to, and not a destination, some of these events, especially entertainment style events, they want that walk-by traffic that says, hey, this is going on, I want to participate with this now. So but like Tom says, we do try to get them to go to other places. And we've been trying to, like you say, Pioneers Park and stuff like that, is to get more runs to go out there. But for whatever reason, they're the same way.
It's that hill.
It's the hill.
Yeah, but yeah, so we're always trying to work with them, but the other thing is if they don't want to go to those places and they want to go somewhere on city streets, we're willing to work with them and try to get them the best possible area for them to work with that's not gonna break their bank as far as the event goes. So those are some of the things we try to do.
These are all huge economic activity generators, obviously. If you think of the people that come in, the 2,000 or 3,000 people from outside of Lincoln to run the Lincoln Marathon, and think about the number of those people that are spending 1 or 2 or 3 nights in a hotel, and the number of meals that are generated. It's giant. The economic impact of these events is huge for us. It's a great issue to have. We just want you to be kind of aware of and alert to the strain that it does put on limited resources.
All right, you've had your dessert. Are you ready for your vegetables? Because that's what's happening now. Gentlemen.
Interesting comparison.
Steve, we're 7 minutes long, so we're doing pretty darn good.
I'm going to do what I can to get back on track here. Good afternoon. I'm here to have a meaningful discussion with you about your Brussels sprouts. We are here to talk a little bit about, let me catch the slides up here real quickly. To talk about enterprise-wide software. What do I mean about this very quickly? This is software that frankly does function in the background, quiet, not really visible to the public on a good day. I will argue, though, that it's some of the most important software we have in the city and warrants your attention and your thought about it and how we maintain it for the city. And in fact, we'll talk about some examples that will also involve your governance colleagues on the county board, as well as what we do here in the city. So we'll talk a little bit about some trends in the software industry overall, and then we'll talk about those 3 examples. Writing software used to be a business where we wrote programs from scratch every time you defined a business problem for us. Today, that trend is much more, we go to the marketplace and we examine whether or not there's a package available that we might be able to buy or lease to solve that business problem. Not always a perfect marketplace. There aren't always solutions in that marketplace. We still do custom development, but much more that consideration of the marketplace. Used to be that once we wrote those programs, we operated it on premise here in Lincoln, Nebraska, or here in this facility. Again, nowadays that trend is certainly shifting to where we use these so-called cloud solutions. It might be based up the street at the state, or it might be based in California, or it might be based in some other data center elsewhere from where we are. The point is that cloud notion of utilizing a solution wherever it might be based with the kinds of telecommunication speeds we have and the networking we have today, location is really becoming sort of immaterial as to where we have those solutions based. Previously, almost all the support for these products was done with staff here in the city. And while that's still very much the case, our staff remains a vital component of supporting these packages. More and more, it's done in partnership with companies or organizations that are external to the city. So there's a partnership, a blended support factor that goes into making sure these products work correctly. Despite these changes, one of the things that hasn't really changed, and I want to have you think about for just a moment, is how you go about solving a business problem utilizing software. And those steps really are still the same. They're very fundamental. We work very hard to understand what the business issue is we're trying to solve. And then we go looking for the best solution. That's a straightforward statement, but sometimes there are constraints. Sometimes there is a limited amount of money available. Sometimes there's a limited amount of time available. So considering those constraints, we have to try and identify what the best solution is. And then we put together a plan to implement that solution. Straightforward, but sometimes elusive to do that. One of the things that I always try to impress upon people is not to approach the business problem with a preconceived notion of what to do. Dating back as far as many years ago when I worked for the state of Nebraska, I would sit in meetings and people would walk in the room and say, I want to solve this business problem and I want to solve it. I don't care what it is as long as it's not on the mainframe. And I would say, why are you worried about what tool we're going to use to solve your problem? Let's focus on solving the problem, not yet what particular tool we're going to choose to solve that problem. So I'd like to spend a little time now speaking about 3 specific examples that we face here in the city, and as I mentioned, also within the county. I'll speak about one of them, CGIS, and then Doug McDaniel and Brandon Kaufman are going to spend some time talking about a couple of other examples as well. Most of you know CGIS is a system that is involved with the broader criminal justice community, both for the city and for the county. It was developed internally. It's a system that has 40 years, I believe, Tom. Started around 1978, so it has been with us for a tremendously long time. Today, when we support this, it's a combined effort of staff within information services, within the police department, and within the county sheriff's department. We work together to support this system. As you know, information services does bill into our customer base, and for the information we're preparing for the upcoming fiscal year, there will be 14 customers for CGIS. You see 4 city, 10 county. The 3 largest customers are the police department, county corrections, and county sheriff. And of those 3, we bill about $558,000 of the total $592,000 to those 3 primary customers. So they are the big participants, with several others that are much smaller dollar amounts. And yet I would quickly point out that dollar amount doesn't necessarily mean how important it is to those individual organizations. He may still be in the back of the room, but one of the most passionate speakers I've heard talk about the value of CGIS is Jeff, arguing what the city attorney's office uses CGIS for and how important it is to them. There are some risks about CGIS as it stands today. The software that the CGIS program is written in is not a mainstream product. If I walk down the street and talk to the graduates at the Rake School, most of them would give me a vacant stare and say, what is it you're talking about? They wouldn't know what the product is. The operating system that the underlying computers run on is also a system that's known by very few and frankly managed in a way that is fine on a day-to-day basis, but if we ever found ourselves with a crisis and needed immediate support, it makes me nervous, to be honest. There are staff both in information services and the police department that I would call attention to, that they are at or near or sometimes exceeding conventional retirement age. And there's a wealth of business knowledge in those individuals that will soon be leaving the city. So what are we doing about this? Information Services has done some work, very preliminary, very high level, and certainly not binding at this point in time, to estimate what's it going to cost to address this issue. The work that we did was to start estimating what it would cost to write a new solution to replace CGIS. And as you can see, there's a big number there, $2 million. And frankly, I would caution you to not latch onto that yet as a precise number. It could vary significantly either direction this early in the process of trying to understand what it is we're going to do. And that's only if we rewrite it. We might go buy a package and we don't yet know what those might cost. We've asked all of the CGIS users to inventory what they are doing with CGIS. What are the uses that you make out of this product? We've collected those, and we are now working with the purchasing organization, go to the marketplace and say to the marketplace, are there products out there today that would do what CGIS does? So that we could better determine whether or not there's something we could simply go acquire and use instead of having to rewrite that.
Steve, when you compare, you know, you're familiar with the marketplace and the whole world of software, so CGIS, how does that rank, or how is it thought of compared to off the shelf or what Omaha, other Midwest?
I'll start a comment, Tom may jump in. I think what distinguishes our CGIS system that we have today is its sheer comprehensiveness. I think we could go to the marketplace, and if we were focused solely on law enforcement, police departments, we could probably find a number of products that are very good at that. And we could go to the marketplace and find packages that do work for jails. But what becomes challenging, I think, is finding a package that does all of that, or multiple packages to address those and have them knit together in a way that would function as smoothly as CGIS does today. Is that
I
a
would agree
fair?
with that completely. You'd be looking at probably buying a package for human resources in the criminal justice agencies, a package for field reporting, software for jail management, software for civil process management, software for early warning tracking systems and internal complaints, software for training, tracking training, software for criminal history information, software for evidence management. You know, these would all be separate products and separate packages. That's what I think we'll find when we do this, is we'll discover that there just isn't anything out there that has nearly the breadth of what we've developed over the past 40 years with our local system.
Has Lincoln ever thought of sharing it with or selling it to other jurisdictions if it's so
And certainly
complicated?
that's a discussion topic that has already surfaced some, and we will certainly have that in the back of our mind as we go about solving this issue about maybe this is something that we could put forward to the marketplace if we do something with it here.
Thank you.
Last thing I'd make, it's a very simplistic analogy, but it sort of helps capture where we are right now. The CGIS family, all of the consumers of CGIS, have come to understand, come to realize they need to move to a new house. But we're still early enough in that process that they don't frankly know what that new house is going to cost yet. And frankly, we don't know yet whether we're going to move to a pre-existing home, simply buy a home on the market, or whether we're going to go talk to an architect and consider building a new house. So we're really at those early stages of making those decisions about exactly what it is we're going to do when we move from our old house to something new. And we don't really have those final numbers or those precise numbers to share with you yet, but we do feel it's very important and wanted you to be aware of it.
If you go around the United States and talk to police departments about their current records management system, their computer database, you'll find almost all of them bad-mouthing it and telling you how terrible it is and how frustrated they are with it. We would be the lone ranger that if you come here, we tell you we love what we have. We're really worried about losing the functionality that we've enjoyed these past 40 years. Just the reverse of what you'd hear
Yep.
almost everywhere else.
Why not have a third option, or renovate your house?
That is possible, although some of the constraints I mentioned about the existing software that is used for the application and/or some of the operating system that runs the computers, it is my professional belief that those will only continue to diminish in the marketplace. And thereby, finding people who can support it and really understand it is going to be increasingly risky and difficult for us to find, thereby, in my judgment, making it a risk to continue with the tools we have today. So that's where I stand right at the moment, is that we need to look for something that's more common in our technology marketplace so that we can be comfortable we have good support and good ability to continue with the system. I believe Mr. McDaniel is going to come speak with you next.
Well, had I known Mr. Hoppy was going to use a vegetable theme, I would have retitled this, Mr. Potato Head Talks About Payroll. So, I know this is edge of the seat stuff, so hang on. All right. I'll talk a little bit about our current state of how we do payroll and process. It's a paper process right now. At best, the employee records their work hours. It's a manual process on paper. It's then every 2 weeks, it's then given to payroll clerks in each department that then input those hours into an in-house system that our information services department has written, that then transmits to our payroll system and calculates the payroll and so on and so forth. So it's totally manual through every department. Clerk duties, there's clerks, as I said, in each department. The clerks have other duties maybe off payroll cycle, but their jobs are to interpret the rules, the labor contracts, determine the accurate time and compensation for over 2,500 employee time records every 2 weeks. It goes up, obviously, during the summer months with seasonal hiring in parks and other areas, so it goes up to probably around 3,400 in that sense. The potential for human error is, and it's very labor intensive. Anytime you have humans doing payroll at that level, you have a great potential for error. That's what tends to keep me awake at nights, among other things. Payroll processing at the department level begins on Thursdays, and then it's submitted to finance the following Monday. So we have Thursday, Friday, and then Monday to complete the payroll, and that's all the record keeping that goes, the computations, then any questions that may come up in the midst of all of that. The future is automation. A new payroll system, which I'll tell you a little bit about, and then Brandon will go into a little more detail. It will most likely include a time and attendance system. These are automated time and attendance systems. Maybe some of you enjoy those at some of the places that you work at or that you encounter. Lincoln is not on the bleeding edge of this. We're lagging, woefully behind in this area. So the time and attendance system is configured. Code is written to incorporate the rules for every time and pay situation that occurs, and this will occur through all the rules that we have with Lincoln Municipal Code and labor contracts, etc. It forces the rules to be applied consistently across the entire organization then. So we'll capture time in a variety of methods, most likely through a central time collection device, which could be known as a time clock. It could be a proximity card that employees carry and badge in, badge out. It also could be a biometric scan or other methodologies in which we collect their presence and their absence from their workplace. Also can be done through computer workstations, or maybe mobile applications, or telephonic. People can call in telephonically and say, I'm on site or I'm off site, etc. Then at that point, the time is collected. The review of the time inputs is done through supervisors. They'll review daily, weekly, or bi-weekly, whichever fits into their processes of those entries. If there's errors in entries, if I forget to clock out, then an error flag shows up on my supervisor's report. The supervisor must fix that entry before payroll can actually be submitted and run on my hours. Errors must be corrected, as I said, before payroll record is approved and submitted. The time input is automatically transmitted to the payroll system, so it cuts down many of the human interventions. The current state of the payroll system, it's a mainframe system. It's called Tesseract. It was implemented in 1991. It's the same system in place. Tesseract was acquired by a company called Empower, and then Empower was acquired by Kronos, which is the current vendor. Tesseract has 6 remaining customers across the United States. Jokingly, we say that most of the people that coded Tesseract have now retired or have passed on. And that's probably more true than not, you know. So it will be decommissioned in the near future. We're not exactly sure when, but we'd rather look at these things on our timeline rather than a vendor saying, you know, in the next 6 months your payroll system will cease to exist and be supported. So, at this point, I'll turn it over to Brandon, who'll talk about the next phase.
Doug, out of curiosity, you came from Bryan, which has quite a few employees. Any comparisons between the city and Bryan, what you did there on payroll and so forth?
Are you talking about our current state? Or the?
I'm talking about when you were at the hospital.
Yes, I know, but are you talking about the city's current processes or what we're doing in the future? I mean,
I guess whatever comparison you want to make.
well,
This is not a forte
No,
of
our
mine.
current.
yeah,
I do QuickBooks and that's it.
well, ours was totally automated. We had time and attendance, was totally automated. All the rules were written. It's a very painful implementation process to write the rules, and it's very complicated in healthcare, much like city government's 24/7 operation. But it was fully automated. People would badge in, badge out. We had automatic deducts. People could purchase their meals with their proximity card, such as this, and things like that, automatic deductions out of the payroll systems. We ran, again, probably 3,500 payroll entry, or rather processes, up to 5,000 at one point in time, over a matter of a few days with a centralized payroll process. So, again, managers are closest, and they had to review the time records, and it operated much the same way that I'm describing to you. But we at the city are paper pencil for the most part. There's some that are automated to the extent they can, but it's not where it needs to be. So.
Thank you.
Brandon, you can tell us what they did down south in Kansas.
Yeah, so I guess I'm the cleanup act. So Steve talked a little about in-house systems, and one of the in-house systems that they built that interacted with Tesseract to put in information to payroll was Interiors, and they developed that in-house. And they called it Interiors because after interacting with it, it left you in tears. And so we're hoping to replace these older systems.
Must
So-
be eating onions.
What's that?
We're eating onions on the menu now.
Yes. So we have been going through a system currently to replace our payroll HR system. And as Doug and I are discussing this, this is a huge system for the city, probably next to a financial system. It's one of the biggest software purchases that you can make. In fact, it'll touch every employee in the system. And so it'll also bring about somewhat of a cultural shift from moving to that paper-based system to more of electronic-based, with also all of your time and attendance records included in the system. We are walking hand in hand with the county on this and replacing it, since it covers both our systems. We've had two teams. There's a steering committee that is made up by the county clerk, the county payroll manager, the county finance officer, and then we have HR director, the IS director, and then myself that sits on that committee. And then we've also kind of had a technical expert committee that's been comprised of all the technical experts in the departments from city and county. So we invited 3 firms to come in, and those all had local ties. So the 3 firms that we selected were Oracle, who currently owns our financial system, JDE, and in addition, they have presence at the county and also the state. Workday, who has a presence at the state with HR systems, and then also Kronos, who currently owns our Tesseract, our current time or payroll system. So we brought them in, they presented, and currently we're in negotiations with Oracle. And trying to work through all of the intricacies between the city-county systems and needs. And in addition, since Oracle was also just awarded the state contract for their complete financial HR payroll system, we're kind of working to piggyback off of that state contract as well. So this is a significant investment based on the cost that's been quoted to us. It's about $752,000 for implementation costs, of which the city share is 70%, so $526,000, and then ongoing operational costs of about $236,000. And of that share, the city, again, 70%, $165,000.
$236,000 a year?
A year, yes, on an annual basis.
Is that a franchise fee then for the software, or is that just the cost of your in-house
That's
people
your
operating?
annual maintenance costs on a ongoing basis.
That Oracle would get?
Yes, yeah. So you typically how these are set up, you pay them per employee per month. So we would be paying basically for every employee per month for this system.
Is that how it's currently set up?
Currently, we're hosting on site, so there is some maintenance charges involved with that are billed through IS. So it's a little bit different because this would be a cloud-based type system.
Do we know about what the cost for maintenance is right now?
Don't have that on my tip of my tongue, but it's significantly smaller than this number, I have to say.
Okay, would you mind getting that for us?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So we're continuing to work through this to negotiate this contract. In addition, when we talk about bridges to the future, so HR, payroll, and moving forward with Oracle on their Fusion system allows for also integration with the financial system in the future, so that these talk to each other. It allows for cross integration, not only for HR payroll and a finance system, but also a purchasing system as well, that typically all of these can be packaged together through one company so that they're all talking to each other, and we don't have to bring in experts to try to implement bridges to make sure systems talk to each other. So this is the kind of eye candy that we have in finance for pictures. This is our current JDE software.
And you still have it hooked up to a Commodore 64?
Yes, sorry.
That was an upgrade.
So the JDE system was implemented in 1997. We're getting to the point, at some point it would be helpful to get a system that would integrate with HR payroll and also purchasing. You can see it's the old AS400 green screen, very trustworthy. It's operated. Kind of the same thing as Tesseract. A lot of the people that put in the system are also getting close to retirement within the city as well. So there is some future potential there of integrating the finance piece to HR by piggybacking off of the state contract to look at that Oracle Fusion system. The states, like I said, is going through that as well. LPS is also replacing their systems, and I believe they chose M4 with their system. They've been saving for 15 years. I wish we were in that position, but we're not, to replace the financial system. And their total cost to replace LPS was around about $6.9 million. So these are expensive systems. With that, I'm going to stop for any questions.
Okay.
I did, so I know that there's gonna be this increased cost of the maintenance and so forth, but, I expect when we go animation, we'll have savings on staff time. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's definitely some potential savings from staff time, especially when you're going from a paper-based system where, you're getting paper, you're entering, and whether that comes through staff reduction or if those are just duties shifted toward other things within
So at
department's
this-
needs.
I'm sorry, at the
Okay.
stage we're in now, then, do we have any idea how that's gonna play out? Okay.
Not yet, and I think that's what we're trying to figure out moving forward is how within the system. Now, we do have time. Typically, these systems can take up to a year for implementation. So we're in the early stages of this, so we are looking at it as we move forward in the budget development process.
Thank you.
And this is probably more for Doug, but also, there might be some city or county employees who aren't always so good about managing their time. And so is there some accountability there too, so that we know people are actually putting in the hours that they say they are?
Absolutely, Carl. As Brandon said, there's a culture shift. And rather than me just relying upon, my manager to put my time in or something, or no, there's an accountability part on the employee to say, you have to get your time in. You know, you have to clock in, you have to clock out, or whatever mechanisms we use in that sense. And then it's the manager's responsibility to make sure it's being done. So there is some accountabilities that we get, and it is a huge shift, as we said, in the culture.
Our next topic is how the city communicates with the public, and Diane Gonzalez will be our next presenter on that.
We already had dessert.
We're actually only 5 minutes behind, Diane.
All right,
So communicate quickly. Cover yourself accordingly.
all right. I'm Diane Gonzalez. I'm the manager of city communications for the city of Lincoln. And I asked my staff to be here today, in case they have any, you ask me any questions that I need their help with, but also want you to get to know who they are. I think you're probably most familiar with our video staff. Jamie Wenz and Melissa Fuller are here. Bo Wolf is running things behind the scenes at the moment. And as I said, we have a couple of new faces. John Taylor has been with us for a couple of years. John kind of does a lot of different things. When you heard Shane talking about redoing the city event application, he's kind of working on that at the moment. He serves on the city events team. He's also helps a lot with media relations. We've got Justin Komacher, who's been here for a while. He's our web guy. And then the newest member of the team is Hugh Davis. There's Hugh. He put together all the slide presentations you've been seeing today. We actually share Hugh with Public Works, and his specialty is social media, so he's been working a lot with that. One of the things that's great about the team we have now is that they are all skilled in a lot of different areas. For instance, Justin, John, and Hugh are all really good with graphics. So we've added some depth to our team, you might say. We also have a lot of partners in some of the other agencies that I want to mention, in particular Holly Salmi and Michelle Zolke in Public Works, Kat Scholl in Parks and Rec, Angela Sands at LPD, Dave Norris in Aging. Those people all coordinate with us in terms of city communications. So our big change over the last year has been a big rebranding. We used to be the Citizen Information Center, and we have changed our name to City Communications. Citizen Information Center had a couple problems. That's what we've been called since we started. But I continue to this day to get a lot of calls about immigration. People think I deal with citizenship. Center also implies that we actually have a physical location like a visitor center, when in fact, no, we're really more spread out than that. So we have changed our name to City Communications. We have also rebranded our government and education access channels. This is the new branding. I'll talk a little bit about the reasons for that when we talk about our video operations. We do have a new grant to continue the City Health Channel, kind of the continuation of a grant that we've gotten from the Community Health Endowment. We continue to work on web redesign. There's the City Council's new page, so I'll let you all look at yourselves here for a little while. So that keeps going. We have an increased social media presence. Hugh has been a big help with getting more social media out into the community. Some of the things we've been working on lately, we've worked very closely with Carson & Co., both on the Be a Recycling Champion campaign last year, and now on the new Take It to the Bin campaign that we just launched last week. We have several people working on the new bike share program and getting information out about that. The rebranding and promotion of the new action center, Uplink, we've been very involved with that whole effort. And we're also working a lot with departments in terms of employee recruitment. Right now we're working with HR in terms of getting some of the summer jobs filled, all of the summer jobs filled. That would be nice. Been working with Tom on LPD recruitment, and we just finished a video series with Lincoln Fire and Rescue that helps with recruiting as well. So one of the things that Rick Hoppy talked about, we're going to get into indicators a little bit. He mentioned this one indicator, how many people can correctly identify the city's share of the total property tax levy. The reason that we look at this is that anecdotal information tells us A lot of people overestimate what percentage of the property tax dollar actually comes to the city. The source for this information is the city customer satisfaction survey. These numbers all reflect the random sample survey, which we sometimes call the scientific surveys. So right now, last year, 2017, the latest result was that 27% of the respondents could correctly identify the total property tax levy. That means that there are 73% of people who don't, which is an issue. The highest percentage of respondents said, we don't know. 55% of respondents on the survey did not know. The correct answer, of course, is 15.6 cents of every property tax dollar comes back to the city. And it's been between 14 and 16% for many years. So 73% of the people who responded either don't know our share of the property tax or think that it's higher. A few years ago, we did a series with the Neighborhood Extra, and that was back when it was more like 14 cents. The series was called Your 14 Cents, and we went through and explained what it is the public gets for that 14 cents that comes to the city. We're looking at launching a new informational campaign that works more with social media in terms of getting people to understand our share of the property tax levy. So that is one of the indicators that we have in the taking charge process. The reason that we are
Diane,
looking.
on that 27%, what, do you give people like a percent range, or does that you have to be 15.6%?
Right, they don't have to nail it. We have the categories less than 20%. So that's what 27% of the people indicated.
Thank you.
Another 13.9 thought it was 20 to 40%. 2.9 said 40 to 60%. Greater than 60 was, I think, 1.1, and then don't know, of course, was the 55%. So, as you know, the place or the source for the information that we get about city government and about everything else is changing rapidly. So one of the reasons we want to focus more on social media in terms of getting out that one message about the 15.6% is that online sources are on trend to eventually outpace television in terms of where people get their information. Mobile devices are rapidly becoming one of the most common ways for Americans to get news, and I'm going to show you a couple charts here that use data from the Pew Research Center. So this one looks at the percentage of U.S. adults who get news on each of these platforms: television, online, radio, and print newspapers. Television has long been at the top spot: local news, network news, cable news. But the gap between television and online, you can see, is reducing dramatically. In 2016, the gap was 19 points. In 2017, it was 7 points. So if this trend continues, we see that our online may eventually overcome television in terms of where people get their news. The percentage of U.S. adults who get their information on social media sites is also increasing. 2/3 of Americans now get at least some of their news through social media. And that's up from 62% in 2016. That's not a huge or dramatic increase. But Pew reports the growth was driven by substantial increases in older Americans. So for the first time in the Pew surveys, more than half of Americans age 50 and older are getting their news on social media, and Twitter is the platform that saw the largest growth. The challenge for us in city communications is that we are competing for attention online and in social media with viral videos, paid advertising, fake news. It takes a lot of creativity and it takes a lot of time to actually make a dent and get people to pay attention to what you want them to. One of the things we have started looking at is using some of the paid options on social media. Melissa has some experience doing that with the Health Channel, for instance, Facebook boosts and that kind of thing. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some of our other indicators here. This is the percentage of people who use the city website, and our goal is to increase that number by at least 5% over 3 years. The source for this is Google Analytics, and you'll see some years it has gone down a little bit, but we also keep a percentage over 3 years, and it continues to show a continued increase of our city website. We expect to hit the 3 million user mark this year in 2018.
Is that clicks or individual, how do you measure?
Unique
sorry?
visitors. This indicator, the source for this indicator has changed since the last time we presented this, but the numbers are pretty steady.
What's a unique visitor?
Justin, unique visitor.
Unique visitor means if you visit it 3 times, you're still only 1. Just kidding, I'm just.
That's basically what Roy's not that lucky.
I knew it.
Wow. Huh.
All right, let's take a look at, oh, I lost my notes.
You got lucky.
All right, web usage. All right, we're gonna take a look at viewership on our channels. And I seem to have lost, give me just a second here. All right, we're just gonna wing it. All right, this is the percentage of people who say they receive information on our 3 channels, which have been rebranded as LNK TV City, LNK TV Health, and LNK TV Education. These are, the source for this is the customer satisfaction survey. And again, we've just used the random sample surveys, and as you can see, the percentage of people is declining. We expected this, and there are several reasons for this. One of them is that a lot of people still have Spectrum. Spectrum both has changed where our channel is located, and also it's all digital now, so people who have analog TVs can no longer get our channels without having some kind of box. Also, one of the reasons we rebranded is because we are no longer on 5, 10, and 21. We're on actually 9 different channels. Jamie, did you hand these out? Okay, Jamie's gonna hand this out. These are cards we're trying to distribute to let people know where we are on the 3 different systems. This information is also, you'll find a link on the homepage of the website about how to find our channels. You'll see that our city channel, for instance, this is the one that carries the city council meetings. On Allo, we're on channel 2, on Spectrum, we're on 1300, and on Kinetic, we're at 1005. So it's become a little tricky for people to find out where we are. But the biggest reason we think that we have seen this go down is that just viewership habits have changed a great deal for the public. Less people are now watching television on traditional televisions. They're watching on some kind of device. So that's one of the main things that we are seeing in that area. So that's kind of the bad news, that people are, they aren't seeing as much of our information on traditional cable television that they watch on a television set. We did, with the survey this year, we added some information. We added a question about where do you view our programming. Cable TV was still, of those who watch our programming, cable TV was still the #1 on that one. We are thinking of adding, because we try to promote all our video programming through other places like Video on Demand, YouTube, the online streaming. We may change this question in the future to say, ask how many people are aware of the information on these 3 channels. But we won't have another survey for a couple years, so. Okay, now for the good news on viewership.
And if I may, and maybe
Yes.
as you go through your presentation, can you correlate like the segment of the video here and how that relates to your budget allocations? Because obviously we see all the equipment here when we're in meetings and so forth, but that versus the social media and others, have you analyzed that at all?
All of the equipment that you see here, all the equipment, all the all the hard costs like the equipment, the cameras, all of that is covered through the cable fund.
Right.
The cable fund covers a very small portion of the operations. But I want to talk a little bit more about sort of the merging of our video with social media here. And then we'll see if that answers your question.
Thank you.
So this is the good news, and this is a new indicator. This is the viewership of our channels on YouTube. And as you can see, it is pretty much skyrocketing. Our goal now, with this new indicator, is to increase the number of YouTube views for our city and health channels by 10% a year. For LNK TV City, we're looking at not just views on that particular website, but also on Nebraska Wesleyan Sports, Aging Partners, the State Historical Society, Preservation Association of Lincoln, and the LES. We do a lot of programming for those. As you can see, we had close to 500,000 views on YouTube last year for our 3 channels. Our health channel in particular is doing extremely well with 344,000 views on YouTube last year. I wanted to talk a little bit about the health channel and a little bit about the history of that. We have 2 government access channels here. One is the one that carries council meetings and county board. The other one had been a bulletin board channel for many years. And back in 2012, the staff person who did that programming was cut. So we had another channel we needed to find a need for. So what we did was partner with the Community Health Endowment and create what we believe is the only government access health channel in the country. The majority of that support has come from the Community Health Endowment. I mentioned earlier that we're in the first year of a new 3-year grant from CHE. But CHE's support of that is declining, and that's by design. Generally, CHE only makes a grant for a project for 3 years, and after that you're to be self-sufficient. But they've made an exception for our health channel because the channel is providing very valuable support for some of the other programs that CHE funds. So we do get some underwriting from agencies and from other businesses, some city financial support, but mostly that's in kind. So I wanted to give you that little background on our health channel. In terms of the city channel, we've also made some improvements in that. In the last year, we've launched live streaming of all the meetings and news conferences on YouTube and Facebook. We tweet anytime that we're going live. You may have seen some of those tweets. We now have the ability to live stream from other locations, and one in particular is the LPD briefing room. We had about 10,000 YouTube views back when we were, the LPD was doing briefings on the Sidney Loof case. So a lot of people are tuning into that. Another new thing that is great, especially for council meetings and county board meetings, is the video indexing. If you want to just see a particular item on the council agenda, you don't have to fast forward or rewind anymore. You can go to the agenda item and click on it. It'll take you right to that portion. Some of the things we have coming up in terms of our video operations, we are replacing our production truck, and again, all those expenses will come out of the cable funds. We're looking at closed captioning. We're trying to find a cost-effective way to do closed captioning. Jamie's kind of getting some estimates now, but it's looking like $1 a minute for closed captioning, so we need to look at a service that is something that's going to work for us. So with that,
Diane, if I may, in the first 3 fiscal years there, how did the total equal 0 when the blue line was above it?
The blue is the city channel. That's when we started putting videos on YouTube. And you'll see,
But the total equaled the video, oh, well,
what was that?
it looked to me like the green line equaled the red plus the blue.
The green line, no, yes, the green line is the red plus the blue.
What he's saying is the blue line, the green line should have been the same for the first 3
For those 3 years.
Oh, we just didn't add, yeah, that would basically be, we didn't have the health channel until 2010, 2011. So that's when we added the green line to show the totals. All right.
Larry?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were done. one more slide. We also have added a social media indicator, and we have chosen to look at our Twitter followers. We do have the largest Twitter following in the city. As of yesterday, on the general city account, we had 17,000 followers. We also wanted to, in this indicator, keep track of the number of people who follow us on Twitter on snow, which is also a very important part of what we do in city communications. So you can see that our Twitter followers are generally on the upswing, and we expect that to keep going. Couple other, you may have a question about Facebook. We've started developing our own Facebook identity that's not tied to the chamber or to a contracted account. That's just getting underway. There's some interesting history that, if you're interested, I can attempt to fill you in on that a little bit. We've got a social media policy that we're looking at finalizing here pretty soon. And we're also looking at adding an indicator for Uplink. Uplink is the new action center that uses the See-Click-Fix platform. So we're working with Lynn Quenzer, the city ombudsman, on coming up with a new indicator for Uplink as well. So, and with that, I'll take any questions.
Very.
How'd I do on time?
Just right, perfect.
Thank you, all of you, for the presentations. I know, having sat on the ISPC committee for a while now, that the amount of thought and sort of effort that's gone into the process and making sure that it's a good process is really appreciated by the city and county officials that are paying attention to that. And it's obviously important to have all the inward-facing technology strengthened for the future. And with the comms, it's great to see the rebranding and the uplink, and the new council page is appreciated. One thing, I think, if you have these goals of getting more people to look at the website and to utilize it, it seems to me, in addition to the focus you have on pushing out the information you want people to have, is to make it easier for people on the outside looking in to find the information that they are trying to find. And can you go to lincoln.ne.gov from here? Just the homepage? Can you just switch to that? I mean. And I know that you've been sort of department by department looking at updating the city website.
Yeah, the new homepage, we are looking at rolling that out this week or next week.
Well, that's great to hear, because, you know, this is tough for a user to know. I mean, you have to kind of know how to find what you want a lot of the time for this.
Yes, we agree.
Front page right now, is this on the network, Jamie?
I think it's just on the public Wi-Fi.
What we've been doing while Justin's looking for that, what we've been doing with the website is that we've been working on the internal pages first. We didn't want to have a flashy new, up-to-date homepage and then have people go to the individual pages and have them all be the old format. So it's taken a while. Justin, until we had Hugh this year, Justin's been the only one working on it. And he is frequently called away for emergencies,
Yeah.
web emergencies and other projects, so.
Well, I think based on the goals and the fact that
We
we're a
can't
city
get
of the
in.
size we are, I mean, it just,
Do you
You
wanna
were
say it?
absolutely right. There are only still a few pages that use this same format. Almost every other agency, and for instance, our oops, where am I going?
I'm not sure.
well, I guess just some requests I have as you look at this going forward is to improve the search functionality for users, because I know it's, you know, the keyword search is pretty tough.
That's Steve.
So,
Yeah, I don't know who this is directed. I just want to, offer perspective on.
sure, but we've got 10 minutes left to go through 35 minutes of briefing.
Yeah, there is
There's
one more
there's
after
more
me.
presentations?
Yes.
Okay, I'll be quick.
Okay.
Improve the search functionality. reduce the amount of text and hyperlinks to things like PDFs. And, you know, I know you're getting this common sort of style sheet across the entire organization, but maybe there's room to do that with the county as well. I mean, I think that Tom's work on Open Data website with others in IS has a more user-friendly interface, and it's easier to try and look by services and things you're interested in rather than by departments. You know, I would say that some great sort of best practices examples, again, these are probably cities with different resource allocations for their city website, but Louisville, Kentucky and Denver, Colorado both have really user-friendly sort of services. And to the extent that it takes more resources, potentially as some of these other things are getting more automated, it'd be nice to see redeployment of FTEs towards what is clearly a growing desire or demand from citizens, is like, I want to be able to do this on my phone
Right.
more easily.
Right. We've been working on it as much as we can with the resources we
Yeah.
have, as I mentioned.
One person is not
Right.
enough.
And now we have 1.5. Well, Hugh is working, like I said, mainly with social media for us and Public Works. But I appreciate that, Larry, and it's been frustrating to have a lot more needs in that area than we have the staff to be able to meet.
We hear about it from the public too, like the website needs, you know, it's this, I think, that they're talking about, and they
Right.
see the improved pages, and that's helpful, but the search functionality is also just so key for the user experience. So-
Right, as Justin mentioned, the search is something we'll work with IS on to make better, but in terms of the front page of the website, the homepage, I think you'll be happy with what we
coming?
roll out this week,
Okay.
yes.
Great.
Let's
Stay
go
tuned
ahead
for
and
more. We need to
talk
get
about
back to
the
the-
changing
We have,
face of public communication. Or employee training, is that where we're at?
We have one topic left. Daniel will be doing that, and it's about employee training.
We'll get your slideshow up here in a second. Thank you all very much. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Okay. All right, my topic is to share with you a little bit about organizational-wide training and development. I'll try to, in the interest of time, try to keep it as brief as possible and yet convey what I need to convey. I'm going to skip over the common terminologies. You can look at that later on, but I delineate training, development, and succession planning. Rick gave a little insight into succession planning. It's difficult in this environment to do true succession planning because by code, openings are done by competitive process as opposed to the private sector. But still, we can prepare people for those opportunities for things we're maybe not getting done it now. A little bit about the current state of training. Right now, there's no consistent enterprise-wide training or organizational development. That being said, I don't want to ignore the fact that some of our larger departments do have training divisions and conduct skill-based training, such as police and fire, and they do a very, very good job, but there's nothing enterprise-wide that really addresses our training and organizational needs. Current efforts are limited to trainings that are provided by a third party. That's Continuum EAP. Part of our contract with them allows some organization-wide training on a menu basis. So requests for proactive or strategic organizational development needs cannot be met. We just don't have the bandwidth to do that. Here's a listing of the 2017 Continuum EAP trainings that we did do, and you can see they're broad and generalized in nature. They're not specific to the organization, and they are a voluntary-based training that people come to. So sometimes you don't get the people coming to training when it's volunteer that maybe need the training. So.
Doug, do we have new employee training? I thought I saw something like every 2 weeks.
I'm going to come to that.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
I'll address that
Let's
indeed.
hold our questions, please. We gotta get done.
Rick said Rick said we have an aging workforce. Now, he said 46 years of age is the average. We've aged 1 year during this presentation. It's actually 47, so I'm sorry about that, but if it goes on, we may get to 48. Full-time workforce over age 40. This is striking. 69% of our workforce is over age 40, so 1,338 employees are over the age of 40. Full-time turnover for the city is 6.7% annually. All right, so nearing up about 7% turnover. Most of that is retirement, some of it is voluntary, some of it's involuntary. The gap, well, training is limited by the resources within my department specifically. There's no training or organizational needs assessment that we're doing, so there's no assessment work that we can do. Training is provided is reactionary, it's not preventative or proactive in nature. New employee orientation is very limited at this point. I'll talk briefly about that as we go on in the future. But right now, there's very, very little new employee orientation or training. The future needs, what we need. Technical skills to support customer service. We need to train people better on customer service skills. Consistency from department to department. Departments are left to do their own training on the job or something of that nature in terms of customer needs. Periodically, it may need to be reinforced, or there may need to be remedial training when it's indicated. We talked about the time and attendance system and payroll system. There'll be a great deal of training needs that come with that, with the culture shift and getting people prepared and geared up for that whole shift in terms of time and attendance and things such as that, which will be enterprise-wide. Management and development and training, hiring selection, that's a need. NeoGov, which is our online application system, technical skills to operate NeoGov. We've done the best we can with the resources we have, but there's still a lot of things that people don't know how to do with our online application system and how managers manipulate that. Effective interviewing and selection, it's done on the job. How we train people to interview and how we train people to select. We don't have enterprise-wide training for this. New employee orientation and onboarding, what we need to do. Aspects of being a city employee. How is it different between a city employee and a county employee? How is city government run? What's the city council? Amazingly, some people get city and county governments confused. They think that we're one agency and they can transfer between the two. Or they understand that maybe this group is commissioners or city council. Our employees are citizens that don't really understand the processes they're working for. The organizational structure of the city, diversity and cultural competencies, things we must be doing in this age of employment and really addressing that we're not able to. Harassment and retaliation training, benefits and safety. Currently, what we're doing, and I'll come back to this, but currently it'll be a repeat slide, but for Ms. Lamb's question, currently we have, every week, we have a one hour new employee orientation, which covers benefits and safety. And now departments take on the bulk of that as employees leave that enterprise-wide. That's not really what we're proud of doing. There's nothing that we zero in on retaliation or sexual harassment training or anything such as that. It's what we're left with. Okay. More on management development, performance management, effectively using the probationary period. How do we really evaluate people during that probationary period to see if they're really fit for the work that we do? Departments do that well, but we probably miss some going through. Basic performance management, setting expectations, documenting performance, providing feedback, making the transition from a coworker to a supervisor. Many of our entry-level supervisory positions are hired from within due to labor contracts. And how do you make that transition from being a coworker to now a supervisor? We'd like to implement at some point in the future a management academy. This goes to succession planning, some things that prepare people, effective communications, managing change, process improvements, performance evaluation, team building, harassment retaliation training, cultural competencies, again, discipline and employee relations, how to have crucial conversations with employees, how to give bad information to employees, and how to do that effectively so that you still have an engaged workforce. Leadership development, developing and communicating a vision, strategic planning, succession planning, leading change, project management, and accountability. These are all things that need to be addressed across the enterprise for us to better prepare this workforce for the turnover that we're going to be having for these people that are in the age 40s, 50s, and 60s that are going to be turning over. So what's holding us back? Well, it's limited resources. There's really 2 of us within the Human Resource Department that are able to do training, and we need really to do it correctly 3 to 4 FTEs. So in this next biennium budget, I'll be asking for 1 additional FTE dedicated to training and employee relations, just to prepare you for that. And that'll just be the start. Questions? Think I caught us up?
We got 30 seconds left. Hey, we're 30 seconds early.
Can we talk after that?
We can.
All right. Thank you very much. We really appreciate the information
Thank you.
and the accessibility to all of you.